Welcome to the Midnight Lore channel. If you enjoy deep dives into history, folklore, and the stories that shape the world, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss future explorations. Tonight, we turn to one of the most enduring figures in Japanese folklore, a presence shaped by winter itself. Across the snow-covered regions of Japan, people have told stories of a spirit who appears during blizzards and quiet mountain nights, moving silently through the drifting white. She is known as the Yuki-Onna, the Snow Woman, and her legend has taken many forms over the centuries. Some describe her as a ghost, others as a wandering spirit of the cold, and many see her as a reminder of how beautiful and unforgiving winter can be. In this video, we will look at where her story began, how it evolved, and why she remains a central figure in Japan's folklore. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Introducing the Yuki-Onna. Snow falls in a way that silences the world, turning the landscape into a pale and distant dream. It settles in thick layers over the mountain pines, softening their shapes until they seem almost spectral themselves. The wind moves slowly at first, pushing fine crystals across the surface of the untouched drifts, whispering through the trees as if trying to warn anyone who still lingers outside. And in the dim light of a winter evening, everything feels suspended between the living world and something older, colder, and infinitely patient. A lone traveler pushes forward along a narrow trail, bundled tightly against the deepening cold. His lantern swings with each step, throwing a weak circle of gold across the snow that disappears almost as soon as it forms. The night has begun to thicken, and with it comes that unsettling quiet that descends only during storms, the kind of quiet that makes people turn their heads, wondering if they are truly alone out here. The air begins to feel different, not simply cold, but empty, as if the warmth inside the body is being drawn away by something unseen. And in moments like these, in the space between a heartbeat and the next gust of wind, travelers throughout Japan's snowy regions have spoken of feeling watched, not by animals, not by spirits they could name, but by a presence that stood just beyond the reach of their lantern light, waiting for them to notice the shape rising gently out of the snow. A tall figure, a woman, silent, unmoving, almost part of the storm itself. Her appearance is described as beautiful, but not in any way that brings comfort. Beautiful the way moonlight is beautiful on a frozen lake, striking, ethereal, and merciless. She carries the cold with her, and every breath seems to dim the world just a little more. If the traveler speaks, she does not answer. If he steps back, she glides closer without disturbing the snow at her feet. And in that moment, when fear and fascination mix into something impossible to escape, the old stories begin. This is the world of the Yuki-Onna, the Snow Woman, a figure who has haunted winter nights in Japan for centuries. Her presence is a warning woven into the very landscape, blending beauty with danger in a way that only winter can. And to understand where she came from, we have to step deeper into the cold. Chapter 2. Who she is. The Yuki-Onna stands at the crossroads of myth and memory, carried across generations by families who lived close to the mountains and the storms that shaped their lives. She is not a single story, nor a single form, but a shared presence in the places where winter tightens its grip, and the line between safety and disaster becomes thin. To most who speak of her, she is a spirit made of cold and silence, a woman who appears only at night when the snow is thick enough to swallow the world whole. Descriptions are surprisingly consistent across distant regions. She is tall and impossibly graceful, with long black hair that contrasts sharply with the pale glow of her skin. Some say her face is serene and dreamlike, almost comforting at first glance, while others claim she carries an expression so distant that it feels as though she is not looking at you at all, but through you. Her kimono is white, blending seamlessly with the falling snow, though there are older tales where she wears nothing at all, her form hidden only by the swirling frost around her. And wherever she moves, she leaves no trace, no footprints, no disturbance, as if she is carved from the storm itself. In many stories, a traveller's breath freezes in the air the moment she appears, hanging motionless for a heartbeat before dissipating into the cold. She sometimes hovers just above the snow, her form drifting rather than walking, carried on currents of wind that do not touch the trees. Her presence is silent, but silence is perhaps the strongest part of her lore. It surrounds her like a cloak, muting the world, until the only sound left is the faint rustle of snow settling on distant branches. She is often portrayed as both beautiful and terrifying, a combination that reflects the dual nature of winter in Japan's mountainous regions. Winter brings purity, stillness, and calm, but it also brings danger, isolation, and death. And just as the first snowfall can be enchanting, the same storm can swallow a traveller without a trace. The Yuki-Onna embodies this tension perfectly. She is the beauty of the snow, and she is the danger hidden beneath it. But beyond her appearance, what makes the Yuki-Onna so compelling is the way she shifts between roles. Sometimes a killer, sometimes a guardian, sometimes a wife, sometimes a wandering soul searching for warmth she can never truly touch. She is as inconsistent as the winter weather, shaped by fear, admiration, and the quiet respect that rural communities held for the mountains that sustained them. To truly understand her, we must explore not only the stories people told, but the world in which those stories were born, a world where survival depended on listening closely to the warning carried on the wind, and where danger often approached on silent feet. Chapter 3: Origins and Historical Context. The Yuki-Onna legend emerged from the regions of Japan, where winter shapes not only the landscape, but the rhythm of daily life. In areas such as Niigata, Aomori, Akita, and Nagano, snow can fall so heavily that entire villages become isolated for weeks. Before modern transportation and weather forecasting, a sudden storm could erase the boundary between safety and danger in a matter of minutes. In this environment, stories served not only as entertainment, but as a practical guide for survival. Much of what we know about the Yuki-Onna comes from a blend of oral tradition and written accounts from the Edo period. During this time, storytellers traveled from village to village, gathering local beliefs and transforming them into collections of kaiden, traditional ghost stories that captured the imagination of both rural communities and urban audiences. These stories often blended Shinto ideas about spirits inhabiting the natural world with Buddhist concepts of wandering souls, creating a system of belief where the line between nature and spirit was constantly shifting. Winter, in particular, was viewed with a mixture of respect and fear. The mountains held spirits of storms, winds, and snowfall, and the dangers of the season were woven into tales that parents passed to their children. The Yuki-Onna became a symbol of that danger, a figure who embodied both the beauty of the snow and the threat hidden within it. Her legend was shaped by the very real risks faced by those who traveled through forests and mountain passes during the coldest months of the year, when entire communities depended on their ability to read the weather and respect the mountains. A story about a spirit who appeared during deadly storms carried a message that was difficult to ignore. Because each region developed its own version of the Yuki-Onna, the stories differ in detail but remain unified in purpose. Some portray her as a ghost of a woman who died in the snow. Others see her as an ancient nature spirit that predates recorded history. In both cases, she emerges from the same cultural context, communities seeking to explain the unpredictable force of winter, and to personify it in a form that could be remembered, retold, and respected. Chapter 4. Appearance, Behavior, and Abilities. Descriptions of the Yuki-Onna are remarkably consistent across Japan, suggesting that her image resonated deeply with people who lived in the mountains and snowbound regions. She is almost always depicted as a tall, slender woman with long black hair and skin so pale that it appears to glow in the moonlight. Her clothing varies from story to story, but a white kimono is most common, a garment that blends seamlessly with the winter landscape. In older accounts, she appears without clothing at all, her figure concealed only by the swirling snow around her, emphasizing her connection to the natural elements rather than to human society. One of her most distinctive features is her movement. The Yuki-Onna leaves no footprints, even when standing on freshly fallen snow, and she often drifts across the ground rather than walking. In some stories, she appears suspended in the air, her form carried by the wind as effortlessly as the snowflakes that surround her. This ability to move without disturbing the environment reinforces the idea that she is not bound by the physical rules of the living world. Her breath is another defining element of her legend. In many tales, a single exhale from the Yuki-Onna can freeze a person instantly, or drain the warmth from their body until they collapse in the snow. This power is described not as malicious magic, but as an extension of the cold itself, a natural force expressed through a supernatural form. Other stories describe her as able to manipulate the weather, intensifying a storm or appearing at its height, though these abilities vary depending on the region and the storyteller. The Yuki-Onna's behavior is more complex than her powers. She does not always approach her victims with hostility. Sometimes she appears simply to observe, watching travelers in silence before vanishing into the falling snow. In other stories, she tests a person's character, sparing those who show kindness or humility, and punishing those who act carelessly or disrespectfully. This moral dimension reflects the broader structure of Japanese folklore, where spirits often reinforce social values through their interactions with humans. Taken together, these traits form a portrait of a figure who is both familiar and alien, a woman shaped by winter's beauty and its danger, existing at the boundary between the natural and the supernatural. Her presence serves as a reminder of how fragile life becomes in the face of the cold, and how easily the landscape can shift from peaceful to perilous. Chapter 5. Early regional legends. Across Japan's snowbound prefectures, the earliest stories of the Yuki-Onna were shaped by the landscape and the needs of each community. Villages in Niigata told of her drifting silently through mountain passes on nights when the wind carried fine sheets of snow through the air, appearing as a pale figure whose presence warned travelers to turn back before the storm worsened. These stories focused less on hostility and more on caution, portraying her as a spectral reminder of the boundary between safety and exposure. In Aomori, the Yuki-Onna often appeared as a woman standing alone beside a frozen river or at the edge of a forest path, her long hair blowing in the wind despite the stillness of the air. Travelers described encounters where she asked simple questions, where they were going, or why they were out so late, but her voice was almost too soft to hear. If someone answered politely, she faded away without incident. If they ignored her or spoke with disrespect, the temperature around them would drop so suddenly that the lantern in their hand would extinguish, leaving them disoriented in the dark. Nagano's stories present a different tone. Here, the mountains are steep, the passes narrow, and the storms unforgiving. People spoke of the Yuki-Onna, appearing during blizzards, moving just ahead of a traveler, her figure barely visible through the swirling snow. In these tales, she is more ominous, leading people deeper into the storm until they lose their bearings. The danger was real enough that these stories served as warnings, especially to young men who believed they could outpace the winter or ignore the advice of elders. In Akita and Yamagata, the Yuki-Onna sometimes appeared near remote houses or by the entrance to small villages, tapping softly on doors during heavy snowfall. Families were instructed never to invite her inside, for once warmth surrounded her, she would lose the restraint of the cold and drain the heat from the home. These legends reinforced the importance of keeping doors secured during winter nights and not opening them to strangers, no matter how gentle their voice might seem. Although each region had its own interpretation, the stories carried a shared understanding. The Yuki-Onna belonged to the winter landscape, and those who forgot the power of the snow risked encountering her. These legends preserved the practical knowledge needed to survive harsh conditions, wrapped within ghostly narratives that ensured the lessons would be remembered. Chapter 6: Survival Warnings, Hidden in the Myth. To understand the Yuki-Onna fully, it helps to recognize how deeply winter shaped the lives of Japan's rural communities. In the mountains, a single misjudgment could mean becoming stranded between villages, with temperatures dropping faster than a person could find shelter. Snowdrifts could rise taller than a man, and trails that looked familiar in daylight could disappear within minutes during a storm. In a world before modern infrastructure, winter demanded a constant awareness of one's surroundings. The stories of the Yuki-Onna carried this awareness in a form that was easy to remember. A tale about a spirit who lured travelers from safe paths was also a reminder not to wander during a blizzard. Legends of a pale woman who froze anyone who spoke carelessly to her encouraged respect toward strangers and taught younger generations the importance of humility. Even the stories that described her appearing at night, tapping on doors or windows, reinforced the practice of keeping homes securely closed against the cold and against anyone who might be seeking warmth at the expense of those inside. Folklore often served as a way to translate practical advice into vivid imagery. Instead of telling children that the cold could kill quickly, elders explained that the snow woman moved silently through the night, and that she appeared most often to those who strayed from safe paths. Instead of warning young men about the dangers of overconfidence, they spoke of a beautiful spirit who tested the judgment of those she encountered. These stories carried lessons that were easier to pass down than simple rules, because they engaged the imagination while grounding their message in everyday experience. This blend of practicality and mystery is one of the reasons the Yuki-Onna endured for so long. She represented not only fear of the cold, but respect for it. In her presence, people could personify the invisible dangers of winter, its sudden storms, its numbing silence, its ability to claim the unwary without leaving a trace. The spirit became a reminder that the natural world demanded caution, and that survival often depended on listening to those who understood its rhythms. Through these narratives, communities preserved essential knowledge in a form that could be carried across generations, long after the original storytellers had gone. And as the stories traveled from village to village, the Yuki-Onna became more than a warning. She became a symbol of the winter itself, beautiful and merciless in equal measure. Chapter 7. The Mother Variant. Among the many regional variations of the Yuki-Onna, one of the most distinctive is the version known as the Mother Variant, a story that appears primarily in the snow-heavy regions of northern Honshu. In these accounts, the Yuki-Onna does not appear as a lone figure wandering through the storm, but as a woman cradling a small child in her arms. The image is striking because it blends human vulnerability with something distinctly supernatural, and it challenges the expectations of anyone who might encounter her. The encounter usually begins the same way. A traveler, caught in a sudden storm, sees a woman standing beside the road or at the edge of a forest clearing, holding a bundle against her chest. She calls out softly, her voice nearly lost in the wind, asking the traveler to take the baby from her, just for a moment, she says, because she is too weak to continue. The request appeals to compassion, and the appearance of a helpless child in the snow triggers an instinct to help. But the legends warn that accepting the child is the beginning of a test that no human can truly pass. In many stories, the moment the traveler takes the infant, its weight begins to increase. What initially feels like a small bundle becomes heavier with each step, until it strains the person's arms and forces them to slow. The snow grows deeper, the wind colder, and the weight becomes almost unbearable. Some legends describe the child as growing so heavy that the traveler sinks into the snow and can no longer stand. Only then does the woman reveal her true form, watching silently as the cold overtakes the person who showed her kindness. When others find the traveler later, the bundle is nothing more than a pile of snow. The symbolism in these tales reflects the harsh reality of winter travel. Vulnerability could be fatal, and even a small burden carried at the wrong moment could make the difference between reaching shelter and succumbing to the elements. By framing this danger as a spirit carrying a deceptively heavy child, the story provided a memorable warning. Compassion is admirable, but caution during a storm is essential. Not all versions end in tragedy. In a few, the traveler refuses the woman's request, offering instead to lead her to safety without taking the child. In these cases, the Yuki-Onna sometimes vanishes, leaving behind no footprints and no sign that she had ever been there. These variations emphasize that discernment was just as important as kindness, and that not all dangers presented themselves in obvious forms. The mother variant adds depth to the Yuki-Onna's character by blending empathy, fear, and moral complexity. She is not merely a spirit of winter, but a figure who challenges the boundaries between compassion and survival, offering a story that mirrors the difficult choices faced by those who lived in Japan's coldest regions. Chapter 8. The Seductive Wife Variant. Another enduring version of the Yuki-Onna legend is the wife variant, a tale that appears in different forms throughout the snow-covered prefectures. In these stories, the Yuki-Onna does not confront travelers in the wilderness. Instead, she enters the human world more subtly, appearing as a beautiful woman who becomes the wife of a local man. These narratives reflect a different set of concerns, less about the dangers of the landscape and more about the mysteries that can enter a person's life without warning. The story often begins when a man living in a rural village encounters a woman during a winter evening. She is alone, lightly dressed despite the cold, and speaks with a calm, quiet voice that immediately draws his attention. She asks for shelter, or simply appears at his door with a polite request to warm herself by his hearth. Something about her seems unusual, but her beauty and gentleness outweigh any sense of unease. In time, she becomes his wife, settling into life with a grace that appears almost otherworldly. For months, or even years, their life together is peaceful. She is devoted, soft-spoken, and diligent, but there are small, curious details that begin to stand out. She never warms herself near the fire. She avoids baths heated with fresh water. Her skin remains cool to the touch even in the height of summer, and she rarely breathes deeply, as though conserving something invisible. The husband notices these things but accepts them without question, convinced that he has simply married a woman with delicate health. Inevitably, the truth emerges. In some versions, she reveals her identity after giving birth to a child, explaining that the warmth of the household has weakened her connection to the winter world. In others, the husband discovers her secret by accident, catching her in a moment when her human appearance fades and the shimmering outline of the Snow Woman becomes visible. What happens next depends on the version of the story. Sometimes she vanishes immediately, leaving her family behind without a trace. Sometimes she melts into a pool of water as the warmth of the home overwhelms her. And in more tragic accounts, she pleads for understanding but cannot remain in the human world any longer, returning to the snow from which she came. This variant may reflect deeper cultural themes about impermanence and the passage of time. A marriage touched by winter cannot last forever, and the presence of the Yuki-Onna in the household serves as a reminder of life's fleeting nature. The story also explores boundaries between the human and the supernatural, suggesting that even the most intimate relationships can hold secrets beyond human comprehension. The wife variant does not portray the Yuki-Onna as malicious. Rather, it presents her as a figure caught between two worlds, unable to fully belong to either. Through these tales, the legend of the Yuki-Onna expands beyond the mountains and storms, entering homes and families while preserving the same sense of fragility and mystery that defines her presence in every version of the folklore. Chapter 9. Lafcadio Hearn's interpretation. The most widely known version of the Yuki-Onna outside Japan comes from the work of Lafcadio Hearn, a writer who lived in Japan during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Hearn collected stories from across the country and published them in English, preserving many aspects of Japanese folklore at a time when they were beginning to fade from daily life. His retelling of the Yuki-Onna appears in Kwaidan, a collection of ghost stories that introduced Western audiences to the atmosphere and structure of traditional Japanese narratives. Hearn's version differs from the regional folktales that inspired it, yet it captures their essence in a way that made the Snow Woman one of the most recognizable figures in Japanese ghost lore. In his story, two woodcutters are caught in a severe snowstorm and take shelter in a small hut. During the night, a woman dressed in white enters the hut without disturbing the snow outside. She kills the older woodcutter by breathing a cloud of freezing mist into him, but spares the younger one on the condition that he never speaks of what he has seen. The younger man survives the night, returns home, and attempts to put the experience behind him. In time, he meets a gentle and beautiful woman named Yuki, whose appearance is strikingly similar to the spirit he encountered. They marry, have children, and build a quiet life together. Many years later, he recalls the night in the hut and tells Yuki the story, unaware of the promise he once made. At that moment, Yuki reveals herself to be the Snow Woman. She spares him once more for the sake of their children, but she cannot remain in the human world now that the secret has been spoken. She leaves quietly, disappearing into the snow. Hearn's story presents the Yuki-Onna with a degree of sympathy that differs from earlier regional legends. She still possesses the power to kill, yet she also shows restraint, affection, and a sense of responsibility toward her family. This interpretation broadened the character beyond her role as a winter spirit and helped establish her as a figure of both beauty and sorrow. Hearn's writing also brought the legend to an international audience, cementing it as one of the best-known examples of Japanese folklore. While not an exact representation of any single regional tradition, Hearn's version captures the emotional depth and cultural context of the original stories. It combines danger with compassion, fear with tenderness, and ultimately reflects the complex relationship people have with winter itself. Through his work, the Yuki-Onna evolved into a figure with global recognition, her image shaped as much by literature as by oral tradition. Chapter 10. Emotional Themes and Symbolism. To understand why the Yuki-Onna remains such an enduring figure, it helps to look at the symbolic layers woven into her stories. Japanese folklore often expresses ideas through imagery, rather than direct explanation, and the Snow Woman's traits reflect the deeper emotions associated with winter, survival, and the human condition. The most prominent theme is impermanence. Winter is strikingly beautiful, yet temporary, and its beauty often masks hidden dangers. The Yuki-Onna embodies this duality. Her appearance is serene and captivating, but she carries the cold with her wherever she goes. She reflects the idea that beauty can conceal risk, and that moments of stillness can shift quickly into moments of peril. This theme aligns with the broader Japanese aesthetic concept of mono no aware, the awareness of life's fleeting nature. Another key theme is isolation. Many stories describe the Yuki-Onna appearing to travelers who are alone on the road, moving through landscapes where sound is muted and visibility is reduced. The winter environment heightens the sense of solitude, and the Yuki-Onna becomes a manifestation of that feeling, a presence that approaches when a person is most vulnerable. The emotional impact of these stories lies not just in the fear of encountering a spirit, but in the recognition of how easily isolation can turn into danger. There is also the theme of boundary crossing. In several variants, the Yuki-Onna enters human spaces, forming relationships or testing the judgment of those she meets. Her presence challenges the distinction between the human world and the natural world, suggesting that these boundaries are not as solid as people believe. Her interactions often reinforce the importance of respect toward strangers, toward nature, and toward forces beyond human understanding. Finally, the Yuki-Onna carries a symbolic connection to memory and loss. In stories where she marries a human or raises a family, her departure is inevitable. She cannot remain in the warmth of the human world, just as winter cannot remain in the presence of spring. Her exits are quiet, decisive, and often tinged with sadness. These narratives mirror the experience of watching the seasons change, recognizing that beauty often comes with the promise that it will fade. Taken together, these themes explain why the Yuki-Onna continues to resonate. She represents fears rooted in the natural world, emotions tied to the passage of time, and values that shape the daily lives of rural communities. Her legend is not just a ghost story. It is a reflection of the landscape and the people who told it. Through her, winter becomes a character in its own right, mysterious, powerful, and unforgettable. Chapter 11. The Dangerous Yuki-Onna. While some versions of the Yuki-Onna depict her as restrained or even compassionate, many of the oldest accounts describe her as a far more dangerous presence. These stories originate primarily from remote mountain villages, where life depended on an intimate understanding of winter's risks. In these regions, the Yuki-Onna appears not as a mysterious visitor or tragic figure, but as a direct embodiment of the cold itself, beautiful, silent, and lethal. A recurring theme in these accounts is the suddenness of her appearance. Travelers speak of walking through falling snow, seeing nothing ahead of them one moment, and then noticing a tall figure standing a short distance away the next. She does not approach quickly or reveal herself dramatically. Instead, she is simply there, as though the snow drifted aside just long enough to show her form. In several legends, she stands without speaking, watching the traveler with a calm expression that never fully reveals her intentions. The silence that surrounds her is described as deeper than the usual quiet of winter, a stillness that settles over the landscape like a held breath. In many stories, the danger comes from the cold she carries with her. When she exhales, the air freezes in place, producing a fine mist of ice crystals that lingers unnaturally before fading. Those who stand too close lose feeling in their hands and feet within moments, the warmth draining from their bodies long before they realize something is wrong. If a traveler hesitates, she moves closer, gliding across the snow without disturbing it. The cold intensifies with each movement, and some tales describe her touch as capable of freezing a person instantly, leaving their body in the same posture as when the spirit approached. Another motif in these legends is deception. The Yuki-Onna may ask a simple question, where a traveler is going, or whether they are lost. Her voice is gentle, but those who respond often find themselves unable to continue speaking as the cold tightens around them. Others describe her offering shelter in a nearby hut or beckoning them toward a direction that leads deeper into the storm. These accounts reinforce the idea that the greatest danger during a blizzard is not always the storm itself, but the moment of hesitation or misplaced trust that allows the cold to take hold. Not all versions involve direct harm. In some, villagers warn that even seeing the Yuki-Onna from a distance is a sign to turn back immediately, as the storm will worsen if she is present. In this interpretation, she does not kill deliberately. Her appearance simply signals that the environment has become too dangerous to navigate safely. These stories highlight the aspects of winter that are most unforgiving: sudden weather changes, disorientation, and the rapid onset of cold that can overwhelm a person before they fully understand what is happening. By embodying these dangers in the form of a spirit, the Yuki-Onna became a figure who commanded respect and caution, reminding communities that nature often gives no warning before it turns perilous. Chapter 12. The Compassionate Yuki-Onna. Although many stories portray the Yuki-Onna as a threat, there are traditions that describe moments of compassion or restraint. These accounts add nuance to her character and reflect the broader role of spirits in Japanese folklore, where supernatural beings often possess a moral complexity that mirrors human behavior. In these variants, the Yuki-Onna remains a figure of winter, but she interacts with the living world in ways that reveal empathy, curiosity, or a sense of quiet judgment. One common version describes a traveler who becomes lost during a snowstorm and collapses from exhaustion. As the cold begins to overwhelm him, he sees a woman dressed in white standing nearby. Instead of approaching with hostility, she watches for a moment, then turns and guides him toward the faint outline of a village or a distant lantern. When he reaches safety and looks back, she has vanished into the swirling snow. Villagers explain that he was fortunate. that the spirit sometimes takes pity on those who show humility or genuine fear, sparing them rather than testing them. Another story tells of a young couple struggling to survive a difficult winter. Food is scarce, firewood limited, and their home grows colder each night. One evening, a woman dressed in white appears outside their door, but does not approach. She stands quietly, observing the home before disappearing without a sound. The next morning, the couple finds the storm has passed, and clear skies stretch across the horizon, giving them a chance to gather resources and endure the season. In this version, the Yuki-Onna's presence marks a turning point, not through direct action, but through a subtle shift in the weather that gives the couple hope. There are also stories where the Yuki-Onna encounters children. Rather than harming them, she appears to watch over them or lead them back to their homes when they wandered too far from their families during snowfall. These accounts emphasize her role as a guardian spirit, one who belongs to the winter landscape but is not bound to cruelty. The distinction often depends on the context of the encounter. Those who respect the cold may be spared, while those who act recklessly may find themselves at greater risk. These compassionate versions do not contradict the more dangerous interpretations. Instead, they reflect a worldview in which nature is neither wholly benevolent nor entirely hostile. Winter can be harsh, but it also brings moments of clarity, peace, and resilience. By portraying the Yuki-Onna as capable of mercy, these stories acknowledge the complexity of the environment she represents. She becomes a reminder that the natural world is unpredictable, shaped by forces that can both challenge and sustain life. The presence of these gentler narratives adds depth to the folklore. It suggests that the Yuki-Onna is not defined solely by fear, but by balance, by the delicate relationship between humans and the landscape they inhabit. Through her, winter becomes a season of reflection as well as danger, a time when the boundary between beauty and survival grows thin, but not impassable. Chapter 13. Modern Interpretations and Cultural Evolution. As Japan modernized, many traditional folktales faded from daily life, but the Yuki-Onna continued to evolve rather than disappear. Her image moved from rural storytelling into literature, theatre, film, and eventually global popular culture. Each medium reshaped her in ways that reflected the concerns and aesthetic values of its time, allowing her legend to survive far beyond the mountain villages where it began. In early 20th century Japan, printed story collections introduced her to readers who had never encountered the oral versions. Artists depicted her in woodblock prints, often emphasizing her ethereal beauty and the quiet stillness of winter landscapes. These images reinforced the sense that she was not simply a ghost, but a presence belonging to the natural world, tied closely to the season that shaped her identity. Film brought further transformation. The 1964 anthology film Kwaidan, inspired by Lafcadio Hearn's work, presented the Yuki-Onna as both terrifying and tragic, capturing her dual nature with striking visual style. The film's portrayal emphasized her calm demeanor, soft movements, and ghostly silence, elements that have influenced nearly every depiction since. As Japanese cinema explored horror and supernatural themes through the latter half of the century, the Snow Woman remained a recurring figure, sometimes portrayed as a protective spirit, and sometimes as a more ominous force. In anime and manga, she appears with even greater variation. Some works present her as a traditional ghost bound to the mountains, while others reinterpret her as a sympathetic or romantic character, reflective of modern storytelling trends. Video games often depict her as a powerful yokai or elemental spirit, drawing on her association with ice and winter. These adaptations maintain her core characteristics: pale skin, white clothing, and a connection to snow, while adjusting her personality to fit the needs of different genres. Internationally, the Yuki-Onna has been embraced by audiences who find her blend of beauty and danger compelling. She is recognized as one of Japan's most iconic supernatural figures, alongside the kitsune and the onryo. Her influence stretches across cultures, appearing in Western fantasy stories, online art communities, and creative reinterpretations that highlight the timeless appeal of winter spirits. Despite these changes, the essence of the Yuki-Onna remains intact. She is still a figure who commands respect, embodying the silent power of the season that shaped her. Her modern depictions may shift in tone, but they continue to reflect the same themes found in the original folktales: impermanence, isolation, and the delicate balance between beauty and danger. Whether presented as a ghost, a spirit, or a symbolic presence, the Yuki-Onna persists because she bridges the gap between ancient storytelling and modern imagination. Chapter 14: Why the Yuki-Onna Endures. The continued presence of the Yuki-Onna in folklore and popular culture raises an important question. Why has this particular spirit remained so compelling over centuries? To answer that, it helps to consider the qualities that make her story resonate across time, geography, and cultural boundaries. One reason lies in her visual clarity. The image of a pale woman standing in the snow is simple, striking, and immediately recognizable. It captures the mood of winter without needing complex explanation. This clarity makes the Yuki-Onna easy to remember and easy to reinterpret, allowing her legend to adapt while retaining its essential form. Another reason is the emotional range of her stories. The Yuki-Onna can represent danger, compassion, sorrow, or judgment, depending on the version of the tale. Few folklore figures carry such flexibility. She can be a reminder of winter's harshness or a symbol of its quiet beauty. She can embody isolation or act as a guardian for the lost. This versatility allows each generation to find new meaning in her presence. Her endurance is also tied to universal themes. The concept of confronting the unknown, especially in a natural environment, resonates across cultures. Stories of travelers facing danger alone, relying on instinct and judgment, speak to experiences shared by people everywhere. Winter itself is a season that evokes reflection, stillness, and vulnerability, and the Yuki-Onna personifies those feelings with unusual precision. There is also the appeal of mystery. Unlike many supernatural figures with clearly defined origins or motives, the Yuki-Onna retains a sense of ambiguity. She is not tied to a single historical event or moral lesson. Her intentions vary, and her nature shifts depending on the story being told. This ambiguity allows listeners to project their own understanding onto her character, while maintaining the sense of the unknown that gives folklore its power. Finally, the Yuki-Onna endures because she reflects a uniquely Japanese relationship with the natural world. Her legend teaches respect for the environment, recognition of the season's influence, and awareness of the delicate boundary between safety and danger. These themes have remained relevant throughout Japan's history, from rural communities living close to the mountains to modern audiences who explore winter through art, film, and literature. Together, these qualities ensure that the Yuki-Onna remains more than just a character from old stories. She is a cultural symbol, a reflection of winter's beauty and unpredictability, and a figure who continues to inspire imagination, long after the snow has melted. Chapter 15. Closing reflections on the legend. As we look back across the many forms of the Yuki-Onna, what becomes clear is that she has never been just a ghost or a simple winter spirit. Her story is shaped by centuries of lived experience in regions where survival depended on respecting the landscape and listening closely to its warnings. The mountains, rivers, and forests of Japan's snow-covered prefectures created conditions that were both beautiful and unforgiving, and the Yuki-Onna emerged from that environment as a way to express the emotional weight of winter itself. Her presence captures the tension between fascination and fear. The snow that softens the world into silence is the same snow that hides its dangers. The stillness that brings peace can also bring isolation, and the beauty of a winter night can mask the sharp, unrelenting cold that waits for the unwary. Through the Yuki-Onna, these contrasting elements are given a face, a figure who reflects the delicate balance between serenity and survival. Her endurance across generations also speaks to the human desire to understand forces that cannot be controlled. Winter storms, sudden cold, and the unpredictable nature of the mountains were challenges that communities faced year after year. By telling stories of a spirit who embodied these forces, people created a narrative that helped them make sense of the world around them. The Yuki-Onna became a reminder that nature demands respect and that its beauty often comes with consequences. At the same time, her legends reveal a more introspective side of Japanese folklore. The themes of impermanence, restraint, and the unseen boundaries between human life and the natural world are woven throughout her stories. She appears without warning, vanishes without a trace, and leaves behind questions that cannot be fully answered. That ambiguity allows her legend to shift with each storyteller, taking on new meanings while preserving the quiet sense of mystery that defines her presence. Whether she is depicted as a dangerous spirit, a tragic figure, or a gentle guardian, the Yuki-Onna remains a part of Japan's cultural landscape because she represents something more than a supernatural encounter. She reflects the emotional and environmental reality of winter, a season that is as awe-inspiring as it is perilous. In her, the calm beauty of a snowy night meets the ancient instinct to tread carefully when the world becomes silent. Ending, conclusion, and final thoughts. As the story of the Yuki-Onna comes to a close, imagine once more the quiet landscape where her legend was born. Snow drifts across the ground in slow, deliberate patterns, catching the faint light of the moon as it settles into the forest. The trees stand motionless, their branches heavy with frost, and the air carries the kind of stillness that seems to draw every sound inward. In the distance, the outline of a figure might appear for only a moment, pale, quiet, and perfectly still, before fading into the falling snow. Her presence lingers in these places not because she is seen, but because the world she represents still exists. Winter continues to cover the mountains and transform the landscape with the same mixture of beauty and danger that shaped the earlier stories. Travelers still feel a familiar chill when the temperature drops suddenly, and the wind still moves through the trees in a way that suggests something waiting just beyond sight. The Yuki-Onna endures because she speaks to an emotion that has not changed over the centuries. She is the quiet voice of winter, a reminder that even in the most peaceful moments, nature holds a power that deserves respect. Her stories continue to be told not as warnings of a literal ghost, but as reflections of the world that created her, a world where life depended on awareness, humility, and a deep understanding of one's surroundings. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of Japan's most enduring legends. If you enjoyed this journey into folklore and would like to explore more histories and myths from around the world, feel free to subscribe to the Midnight Lore channel. There are many more stories to uncover, each shaped by the landscapes and the people who brought them to life. Until next time, may your nights be quiet, your paths well lit, and your steps steady in the snow.